And so, good morning, and here we are at the sublime port, and I am sublimely contented. So I don't know what the form will be, but why not just talk back and forth? You ask a question, and I will ask an answer.
I'm sure they are all waiting for your opinion about Istanbul. I think you have to tell them if you really enjoyed this trip.
Well, I know everything about it because I've been here almost a day. Aren't you
Even
used to that? No, it's I spent most of my life was writing about Byzance, about the Byzantine Empire, which I much preferred the American one. It was more modest and more beautiful. So let us just chat back and forth. If you think of anything to say, say it.
Yes, it is better if people from the audience starts asking questions so that mine will be very dull if I start.
Let us be the judge of that.
Thank you. Well, I'm embarrassed, to be honest with you, to ask the right question if I don't know.
People who get in front of microphones are never embarrassed.
I am. I'm starting to look, to get away from it if you can't see me.
Good.
But anyway.
We've got a question over here.
Mr. Vidal.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. As a long-time connoisseur of American history and having studied it in great depth, what do you think of the current administration and its policies as it affects the world? I mean, it's a large question, but...
Well, I'll give you a small answer. The problem was, and originally in the election I was for Hillary, because she knew the job. She'd been there, so she was just a wife. People said, well, there's no such thing as just a wife when you're Hillary Clinton. She's also a very good lawyer.
Yes.
And I would trust her judgment on many matters. Osama was too much of a gentleman for as rough a country as the United States is. We have no means of politesse in our discourse, so we have none. And he seems far too honest for a deeply corrupt country. Let me expand on corruption. In 1786, when the Constitution of our country was drawn up at Philadelphia, an old lady asked an old man who was at the meeting but didn't take part in making the Constitution, Benjamin Franklin, Dr. Franklin. And he was leaving the hall, and she said, Ben, what are you giving us? And he said, we're giving you a republic if you can keep it. That was, as Darryl Zanuck, a famous Greek filmmaker, said, an omnious retort. Definitely omnious, if you can keep it. Years later, he was talking to some young men on the street who were questioning him. Everybody questioned Franklin about everything. He was wise. And they said, what did you mean when you said that in the hall? If you can keep it. Is there any danger of losing the republic? Oh, he said, yes. History, meaning he'd been reading Aristotle lately, proves that constitutions are very fragile, easily lost by careless people. And he said, our problem will be the loss of our liberties which we've been undergoing for the last 10 years, the loss of our liberties, the loss of the republic, crazy wars about nothing, which the people don't even begin to understand, much less absorb. And he said what will cause it to end, as it caused a dozen other republics, just as virtuous as we thought we were. And that will cause an end, due to the corruption of the people at large. And he meant every last one of us. I have never found him anything but right, particularly in the last 10 years. It's as if Benjamin Franklin was trying to say, look, wasn't I right? We have crazy presidents, we have crazy politics, we go around attacking other countries, we go around blowing up people. We're a killer republic. In the name of democracy, we just love it, but we never practice it, which is safe. So here we are at the end of the road. If that seems too dark a comment, think about it. I do nothing else but. I do remember thinking that some envy that I had for the people alive in 1786. To be at the beginning of a new country, I mean, what joy. And a friend of mine said, well, you're going to be there at the end, though. Isn't that interesting? I said, it's too interesting for me. That was the age of the little bush person. Let me hear your dulcet voices.
Yes, you better ask.
One nice thing about this venture has been a Republican small r discovery of the arts. And here we are. I have lived for many years on the Amalfi Coast. And every time I used to walk down to get the foreign papers down at the waterfront. And it was rather wonderful because every time I walked down, I thought of Ulysses, more than ever off course, as usual, but wherever he was a bad navigator. And there's Ulysses hacking around the coast. And he was lost, the crew was lost. And as he was sailing past my house, I was set in a bunch of woods, very beautiful. And he heard a voice, a great voice, as he passed. And the voice said, "The great god Pan is dead." And that was the true God for this coast. And the true God for a republic like ours. It was Pan, the artist, the man of the arts, the demon of the arts. And I always thought of that as I walked down that hill, every other day. The great god Pan is dead. And there was no looking back. Events have proven, as I go around, I see the best classical museum I've seen in many years, which you've got going here. And collections of pictures. I mean, you're holding it up in a way the United States, which more enjoys, but blowing things down, as we successfully did with the entire past of Baghdad. We destroyed the museum. Con gioia. We have a lot to answer for. And I believe that nations, like individuals, must take the rewards of their bad deeds as well as good. And I feel sad for this republic that Benjamin Franklin knew was not going to work. So let me say that I have been inspired while I am here. As I understand, the god Pan is also here. E non è morto.
Why did you close your peace party that you fought?
What?
You close your own party, peace party. Why?
I couldn't find my party.
Couldn't find your
I
party.
kept losing it. Next question. That was an easy one.
Mr. Vidal, there's a new government in America now. There's a new government in America now, with a new, younger president, very different from little Bush. What do you make of him so far?
Well, he has my good wishes, my love. I feel for him. He's finding it impossible to govern. We have something that calls itself a political party, a Republican Party. There's no such thing. There's a kind of fascist mindset that's always click, 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 click in America. And sometimes they get power, sometimes they don't. They got power with Mr. Cheney and Little Bush and the others who got together to make money. I know quite a lot about the founders of the country. I don't know as much about these thieves, but I know some of the things they steal. I remember the day when they got rid, through law, through Congress, through voting, they carefully got rid of Magna Carta. They got rid of everything that had ensured our freedoms. They were so thrilled. They had done it. We had a crazy little attorney general who allegedly looks after our legal affairs. And he was from Mexico, and he sort of acted as though the United States was just another version of Mexico. I don't know how much he was paid for that, but certainly he must have done well. We have not been lucky. And I think that what Dr. Franklin was telling us back in 1786, these are not good times to invent a republic. There are built-in hazards. Also, he was a great reader of Aristotle, and I know that you all are readers of Aristotle. I recommend you start rereading him. You will find out that he's not very optimistic about these experiments in republics. They always crash. And it's very hard to tell why. I'd rather blame it on the people than on their leaders. That's too much of an autocratic view. We've never had a leader who led us anywhere, except General Washington, of whom his successor, President Adams, somebody said, why was he chosen, George Washington, to lead the revolution and be the first president? Adams was a very sharp old boy. He said, Mr. Washington was always chosen because he was the tallest man in the room. And he got the job every time. And somebody asked, well, do you think that was a good thing? Well, he said, when I've seen what short people do, I'm very happy with General Washington.
What do you think of Mr. Obama?
Well, how do I think? What a question. I don't know him. If
No,
I knew him,
I mean,
I might have
about
more
him.
to answer.
You know about him, don't you?
Well, I know what the media says, and I know the media never says an honest word about me Why on earth would they find...
Why do you have this idea that they don't say anything about you?
I didn't say that.
You said what?
Already you're misquoting me. and you did it
It's
in 1
difficult
minute,
to
too.
deal with you. It's very difficult.
Don't deal with me.
I won't. I'll keep my mouth shut. That's a
No,
good
no.
idea.
Keep talking.
What about Turkey? What do you think about Turkey now today when you are here?
I tried
with us?
once in my Hollywood days to do a film about Ataturk.
Yes.
Because he was a hero of mine. To take this place and make a secular republic. Everybody said it wasn't possible, and it was possible. And I think it was a grand experiment. Religion and the United States have never mixed well. And attempts to mix it draw us closer and closer to dictatorship. What I'm worried about with Obama now is he's taking on the generals. Now, the generals are the ones who make coup d'etat. Not these, because they lose every war they get into, but they may do a coup d'etat rather better than they could do a war. I worry about that. But you must remember that the United States has chosen. I call it the United States of amnesia. They have chosen to have a life without history. A nation without history doesn't exist. And I find that aesthetically bothersome and practically horrible. They're trying to stop all history teaching in the schools. I mean, it's like the Third Reich. And it is not good. Does anybody object? You see, I don't like to read long books, Mr. Vidal. I got to tell you, I have many, many things to do as a housewife. And my time is really limited to how much time I can think about. What did you say it was again? The United States? Oh, yes. That's a brand, isn't it? Yes, I said it's a detergent, which is not yet on the market.
It's so difficult to ask you a question. I beg the people to ask him the right question that I can't, probably.
You're inviting an assassin from this crowd?
Well, anything I say.
Yes, madam?
There's a question. Hi, it's Bert.
If you compare it to Germany's cornerstone of Rome, are we in the decline or the fall?
What did you say? I didn't.
I didn't hear.
Given decline or fall of Rome, are we in the decline or the fall?
Well, we never got very far. I mean, come off. Comparing us to the Roman Empire is like, comparing Germany to Uruguay. I just guessed that one.
Gore is
We're
your...
not in the running. We were never truly imperial.
Yes.
After World War II, 1945, I had spent 3 years in that war, and I got out in 46, realizing the war was over. I didn't know that the rulers of the country, who were interested mostly in money, getting it away from everybody else, and oil and all of that sort of thing, that they were going to keep on voting more and more money for oil, for conquest, and they had no idea why. It just seemed like fun, I suppose. So I can say that we are well and truly a failure as a republic at this moment. Will we be restored? Well, history shows At least Aristotle shows it doesn't happen very often. Once you lose the thing, you're lost. But the fact they won't even teach our history, I mean, obviously I have a vested interest, that's what I write. It doesn't get taught. And now they're talking about, there's a movement in Texas where all horrible things begin. There's a movement in Texas to not teach any American history before 1870. That means they're going to leave out the Civil War, which Texas well and truly lost, or was always on the losing side. So I would say that we're not well positioned to understand anything. And if you don't understand where we were, you'll never understand where we are. That's a law which I have just promulgated. We better know more about our origins. You asked me about what do I think about Obama. Well, I don't think much about him, but when I do, I am appalled at times. He said at one point, well, he said, a lot of us were trying to put on trial the former Vice President of the United States, Mr. Cheney, and if possible, send him to prison. That seems to me the way a decent country would act. But we didn't. He has come out in favor of torture, rendition, moving people off in dark nights to foreign countries. This is no American Vice President. This is a thug. What does Obama say? Well, we've got to move on ahead. He sounds just like a Republican. That's the sort of thing that they say all the time. Well, if you mustn't worry about the past. You see, it's all over. They got the money. They're happy. I'm not.
You are not happy with Obama?
No. And I don't think Obama is happy with Obama. He's too intelligent for a dumb country like this.
Like what?
United States.
You said
No
like,
one's educated. They don't want to know about history. They hate American history. And they just think they're wonderful. The whole world envies us. Why does everybody come here? They keep asking. My answer is, have you ever seen a Norwegian with a green card? Come off it.
they read your books.
Well,
People.
because they misunderstand them.
You are.
Should we ask people
Yeah?
shall we do a Q&A thing where you choose who would ask questions? And
What?
Shall we do a Q&A with the audience where Leila chooses
Whatever
who
you,
ask the questions?
whatever you like.
Thank you, Go. Is that okay, Leila?
Of course.
And then you add your own interpretation.
Of course, I'll
So
be
who
very
would you
happy.
choose? So whoever has the microphone now may ask a question. Not a statement, a question.
I would choose anyone who can hear what I'm saying. Go ahead, I'm going ahead. You've got to go ahead too.
Özür dilerim Türkçe konuşacağım. Sizin Julian yani sizin romanınızda okudum. Pardon, affedersiniz. Hayatımda okuduğum en güzel sahne roman.
Sending a
That's okay,
transcript.
that's okay. No, you don't, you already have interpretations. He just needs to be on the earphone.
Is it
Yeah.
okay?
Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't care.
Benim halime bakın. Acıyım biraz.
I can hear you.
Yeah, he can hear you.
I assume that you are, from what I hear, a deranged cricket who is dreaming of a better world.
Önce burada olduğunuzdan çok mutluyum sizi gördüğüm için. Yani bütün tek tanrı dinleri insanlık özgürlüğünü bir sınırlama getirdiğini düşündüm. Böyle olmasaydı, Julian başarabilseydi, dünya değişir miydi?
Well, Julian hoped that he could change history. The cricket is overwhelming. He's winning now. Julian was an exceptional man. He was a philosopher. He was emperor. He was a marvelous general, which nobody expected, this scholarly young man. He conquered Gaul. Did a rather better job of it than Julius Caesar. And don't think he was not the first to remind us of it in his various writings. Julian had a message for the world. And it was really that the old gods never die. And you just said, nephew, be careful. The gods are angry. We don't want them angry at us. We want them to understand us if we are understandable, and if they don't, well, that is the problem. So he declared parity between the old religions and Christianity, which his cousin, Constantine, for whom that marvelous museum here has been dedicated to him, Constantine would have been delighted at the play he's getting here. Julian would not. I think Julian's spirit is a bit like the great god Pan. It isn't going to be killed. And he saw to it that everything could coexist. And the more things coexisted, the better it was for the human race. An unlovely race, of which he was not enamored any more than his current author is, either. And I think that Julian was a reincarnation. I like to think of the gods returning every now and then. And the great god Pan is never dead then. Because Pan is there, he's in all of us. And listen to him. He knows more than we do. And he can wait. Worth waiting for.
Questions? Yeah, yourself.
Can you give some your ideas about why the Atatürk project was not realized? Was it the financial reasons or political reasons behind that?
Why what?
Could you, give some more details about the Atatürk project? Why wasn't it realized?
I don't understand the question.
He asked if there is a political or economical cause of the not
Well, I
making the
don't
film.
understand what the question is. I mean,
Atatürk
The
film.
film, the Atatürk project.
That you were planning direct.
An Atatürk film.
I
You
wasn't
remember?
planning to direct anything at that
No,
time.
but there was a time when they wanted to make an Atatürk film.
Atatürk.
Atatürk, yes.
Oh, it took me, I don't know, about 10 years to explain who he was.
To Americans, you mean?
Of course. You see, part of our pride is we are unique. Everybody envies us. We're the fattest people on earth.
That's true.
And we have more diets than anybody else. And we follow the diet and we get fatter. So a proud people like that isn't going to give up very easily. Plumpness will win.
What do you consider yourself, plump or very thin?
No, I think quite thin.
Yes, I think so too. So you have a wonderful life.
Question, yeah.
Mr. Vidal, welcome to Istanbul first. I read your book a long time ago, Perpetual War for Perpetual Peace. And maybe I misunderstood you.
Sorry.
I misunderstood you maybe. I misunderstood you maybe. But can I have your opinion on Timothy McVeigh?
Timothy?
He was a noble young man who believed in the Constitution of the United States, that it was sacred writ to him. He got religion, you might call it, when he watched the American government turn federal troops on American citizens of a religious group and killed them all, burned down their temple, and behaved just like the most vicious of the Caesars. That were Americans killing Americans. And there's a famous law, which he knew a lot about law, called the Posse Comitatus Act of 1876. I'm sure your Latin is good enough to remember what that means. It was a law. Federal troops cannot be used to be turned on American citizens. And there we slaughtered 800 with joy. Great victory. He was a hero of the Gulf War, if there could be such a thing. This is McVeigh. He was a marvelous sharpshooter. He'd got every decoration that you can in the book and was eager to go back into the army. Well, how do you depict him if you're running a bloody abattoir, which the United States was doing at that time? What do you do with somebody who, for noble reasons, said, I will teach the federal government a lesson? Then he did something extraordinary. He was condemned to death. The judge, you can see the judge is falling in love with him because he's a sort of everything the judge in question, thought a young man should be. He's a war hero. He was doing justice as he thought justice should be done. And it came time to sentence him to death. And the judge from the cathedral said, have you nothing to say to us? Well, he said, yes, I do. I would like to quote a justice of the Supreme Court, Mr. Brandeis. He was a very noble justice. And he said, Brandeis said in the Olmsted decision, a very famous one in law, he said, government must remember it is the great teacher. And when government thinks the end justifies the means, they must be prepared for other people with other means and no justice at all. That was the last words of Timothy McVeigh. Then I got a telegram in the middle of the night from him. I'd never met him, but I'd written about him. And he said, it was very touching. He said, you know, he had a sister, he had a father, he had the usual family there. And he said, will you come to my execution? I said, I'm not morbid. I don't like executions. But he was insistent about it. Well, I didn't go. I was too cowardly. And I thought that he was a noble young man. Would I have advised him to kill 800 people in revenge for Waco, which is the name of the place where the government had gone crazy? Did I approve of that? Of course I didn't. But you know, when you're dealing with a very stupid people, and that's my general view of the American people, they are dumb because they haven't got any references to go to. History's been erased for them. They just thought, oh, well, these were a bunch of religious maniacs. The government was right to kill them all. Well, I don't think the people involved were very thrilled about being killed. And they seem to be no worse than any other group of Americans that you might find at any time. So there he was put to painful death. I did watch it on television against my better judgment, and it was very painful death. You know, anything we do is screwed up to start with, so they had the wrong this and the wrong that. And he was in agony. And as we are a vengeful people, always looking for revenge on people that we don't like, we were thrilled that he suffered. I was horrified. Basta così.
If you were able to audition the world, the nations of the world, to be the next superpower, who would you choose?
The divine port. I would make sure I had lived near enough to it to make my getaway. I'd take Switzerland.
You would take?
Americans are always going on. Oh, they're cowards. They stayed out of World War II. Wow. Gosh, that's so yellow. I mean, I think they're ashamed to be up there in those mountains. I mean, come on. We're a very primitive, ill-educated people, and I don't think our opinion on other countries is worthwhile.
So, anyway, you are a cousin of Al Gore.
I'm a cousin of Albert Gore, yes.
How was your relation with him?
Non-existent, except we are cousins forever. Blood cousins, as they call it in the South.
What about your relation with Jacqueline Kennedy, who was a very
She's dead.
I know, but but your relation, how was it when she was alive?
Oh, very good. I liked her. Well, she had a great comic sense, and being First Lady of the land kept her laughing all the time. She didn't think much of the land, and she hated the American people by the end.
Yes, I know. She was here.
Well, don't say that.
I
think she was here being restored, as I am.
Do you have plan to write a new book?
Plans are not new books. I have no idea. There's a picture book about me, which my friend who's now dead, I can't stand being photographed, so I would duck every picture that was taken of me. He kept them all. And finally, Abrams, a publisher in New York, which goes in for picture books, said, we want to publish the pictures. I said, oh, as a memorial to my friend, I said, yeah, go ahead. And they said, would you write a text to go with it? And so I did. And it was kind of fun.
Is it?
Well, I think it is. I don't know if you will.
When do you think it will?
Well, it's out. It's in the bookstores now if you go into one.
I don't know if we have it, to be honest with you.
Well, to be honest with you, I think you did.
You do? Did anyone see the book?
It's called Snapshots.
Snapshots. We have to get it.
It's not the pretentious title. I think they wanted, the voice of doom speaks to you from the grave. I am Caligula. And it's a nice book. And the title is actually Snapshots in History's Glare. Practically everybody I know has been assassinated by now or executed by the state of Texas.
When you get old, do you feel we are nearly the same age, so that's why I'm asking you the question.
Well,
Do
you're
you
doing better than I am.
more or less, maybe very few years, that maybe, I don't know even. But do you feel at all that you're, when you get near the end, what do you feel? I'm really, because you have a,
Well,
what do you feel? Honestly.
somebody asked Confucius that question. Master Kung was his real name. They said, Master Kung, what happens when we die? Confucius said, since we know nothing about life when we're alive, why do you want me to talk about when we're not here at all? Confucius was a very tough old bird. You know?
Oh, was Jacqueline Kennedy, as you was a relative, I think, wasn't she?
Who?
Jacqueline Kennedy. No?
We had the same stepfather. This did
You
not
had
make
the
the
same.
closest relationship on earth.
How was your relation with her?
Very good.
Yes, good.
Why
because
shouldn't it be?
I don't know.
Well, I was the first famous person in the family. She appreciated that and insisted that I come down to Palm Beach to educate Jack Kennedy, who was just being nominated for president. I liked him. And I don't think he enjoyed being dead at all. I tell you that. He was looking forward to being out of politics one day, to have a little boat up there in Massachusetts, collecting girls all day long.
That we know, all of us.
Well, he had a hobby, you know, people should occupy themselves with what they like.
I'm scared of you. I don't know how you feel, but he's so, I can't believe that, you know, he has such a mind. I can't follow up his. What do you think?
Well, luckily I don't lead. You don't have to follow it.
Anyway.
Mr. Vidal, are you able to offer us any words? You're very good at describing the downfall of America, the end of the empire. Are you able to offer us any words of comfort or any thoughts about how things might get better rather than just worse?
When they go as bad as our republic has gone, I don't think you can get it back. When we lost what had been gained at Runnymede, I'm sure you all know what I mean by that. Those were our rights vis-a-vis the king. We didn't break off from England. We broke off from our Lord, who was the King of England, George III. And Thomas Jefferson, when he wrote the Acts of Separation from the so-called United States from England, from the king, he held the king responsible for the breakup of everything. And he went into detail. He was a good lawyer, Jefferson. And it's a great document. We call it the Declaration of Independence. Yeah? Why not? That's what it is.
Do you have any idea about Turkish politics at all these days when you are here? I mean, what do you think?
Well, I am tactful. I'm not going to discuss another country's politics.
No, but
I lived in
right.
Italy for 100 years, you know, and never mentioned Silvio Berlusconi. And I'm not mentioning him now, so.
But what is your opinion about Turkey, let's say, today, what you have seen here since 2 days?
It's the capital of the world, and you haven't even grasped it yet. You just sit there with this magnificent capital city. The architecture, the architect did you no favor. He gave you a world capital. I used to sit in the bar looking out the window. And I thought, well, there's the Foreign Office, and there's the Board of Trade over there. And I was filling it up with bureaucrats, which when you start to think about it, you'll do too.
but not the old building. What about the buildings that are coming, like American top old buildings? What do you think?
Well, I don't complain about buildings that I have nothing to do with in a country that is not mine anyway.
Let's.
Mr. Vidal, could you tell us, what do you know now that you wish you knew as a younger man?
Well, it's a dismally good question. A serious answer would be, I might have thought that the seriousness with which I took the American Republic, it didn't deserve. It just wasn't worth it. I've given a lot of serious thought to a country that didn't amount to much. What would one change? I don't know what one would change. We were an industrial, one of the first industrial republics in the world, followed then by England, which was imitating us, or we were imitating them. And there we were. And we had everything. Then we had a couple of really stupid presidents. The first being Woodrow Wilson. I mean, there was a fool. And he decided he wanted to be a world hero. He got us into World War I. 90% of the American people followed my grandfather, who was president of the Senate at the time. And they followed him. He was an isolationist, as they called it. And he did not think that we should go into foreign wars where our interests were not involved. Then he thought of something called democracy. My God, when Americans start talking about that, look for your wallet, you know, you're really gonna end up robbed. And so that was quite a treat for the bad guys, World War I. The good guys were buried under an avalanche of bad publicity. And of course, a venal press, which has never improved itself since. Imagine the New York Times, all the news that fit to print, except with what we don't want to print. Not a good thing.
Yeah, Mr. Vidal, I have two questions.
Yes, sir.
The first question is, what books or, what thinkers have been indispensable for your development? You mentioned Aristotle, and of course you mentioned the documents of the American Revolution. But could you give us the names of some others if it comes to mind? And the second question is, have you read any Turkish writers, for instance, Yaşar Kemal or Orhan Pamuk?
Well, they don't get translated, you know. In our
They
great
are.
republic.
They are translated.
Well, you've got to find a translation for me. I mean, they don't sell them on my doorstep. I'd say the one serious writer that every American should read and should be forced to read, particularly if he doesn't like it, is Thucydides.
Peloponnesian Wars.
The Peloponnesian Wars. It's the greatest warning, the speech of Aristotle to the people, of Pericles, I mean, to the people, is the greatest poetry that I can think of that epoch. They had some very good poets in those days. And his farewell to the dead of Athens in that war. And he said, now I bid you farewell. He talked a bit too long, he thought. But I bid you farewell. And the women who survive will go home and restore their lives if they can. As for the dead, he said, the dead, they need no monument. great men's death. The whole earth is their monument. And he stepped down.
What did you think of Elia Kazan, by the way, when he?
Well, I liked him. I mean, come on, he's not nothing but.
Yes, but
Well,
he was
why go on
against-
about him? Yes, he betrayed his friends.
Yes.
Well, everybody does that every day in the United States. I mean,
Not
what
the
is
only-
friendship for? Would I have done it in that situation? No, I would not have done it. But I come from a sterner tradition, and he does. He's showbiz. They'll do anything, you know.
Yes, I knew him quite
Make
well.
Caligula.
He really wanted to do that movie about Atatürk after you resigned. I mean, you didn't want to do it, but he wanted to do it, and he couldn't do it too.
Well, I respect him if he didn't, and I respect him if he did. So
Yes,
he knows his own story better than the rest of us do.
Recently, Norman Mailer passed away a few years back, and I'm sure you, sorry, Norman Mailer passed away a few years back, and he was certainly a member of the post-World War II generation of writers and thinkers. Could you regale us with some stories about some of the writers that you knew from this period and liked or detested, as the case may be?
Well, the case is not yet proved for anybody. So we wait for further proofs, which time will give us. He reminded me just before he died, I used to go up and stay with him in Provincetown, and I liked his last wife. And contrary to the press, you know, we always got on quite well. He annoyed me a great deal of the time, but that was part of his charm. Annoyance. It's part of a writer's bag of tricks, isn't it? Saul Bellow couldn't stand him, and Saul Bellow was a much better writer than Norman, at least in my view. He said, you know, Norman's problem is he thinks he's always got to have ideas. He doesn't have any, that's all. Oh, come on, I said, that's weak. Well, he said, I don't think he has any, but he thinks he does, and he's going to tell us all of them if we let him. Well, I said, you know, to everybody is, you know, his own babble. He was well on his way to being a wonderful writer at the beginning. Then he loved publicity, and he thought to get his name in the papers was the equivalent of all glory that ever any man had ever craved. To be in Leonard Lyons, you know, come on. I regarded publicity as, you know, a kind of annoyance. It was set there to get in your way. And he was, he didn't change. That's not a compliment. But at the same time, it's a testament to a steady character, which I found rather admirable. No, he never had ideas, but he didn't know that he didn't have ideas. Thought he had. I know a lot of people who are in that fix. Don't look at me, I don't have any ideas at all. I have commentaries.
when your book is criticized, for example, weren't you angry or with the critic?
No.
most of the writers are very angry.
Well, most writers are, you know, rather idiotic. I mean,
That's true, but
they want to tell the truth because they know it. And if you don't like the truth, so there. Oh, wow. You know, they're infantile by and large. Most Americans affect to enjoy children. And the more like a child a writer is, the more he seems like a real person.
do you have a new book coming? Are you going to write
Well,
a
you
book?
can't read the old one, so I mean, I don't think you need a new one.
No,
Not to read either.
Tell me, but really, do you plan to write anything about Turkey?
No,
You are not.
Turkey has had quite enough history already.
Mr. Vidal, on a lighter note, what prompted you to write the screenplay for Caligula?
Well, you make it sound like somebody came to me and said, "Do you want a script? A dirty script about Caligula?" I thought it was time to do an accurate picture about Rome, which I based on Suetonius. Nobody in Hollywood had ever heard of him, so it was quite safe. I was not apt to have any competition. Then a crooked publisher called Bob Guccione, who did Penthouse and the Penthouse Pets, wanted to do a porno film. He grabbed it, got hold of the script, and he had a whole set of writers and other nondescript people. And they came up with, I believe, I've been told, I haven't really seen it properly ever, but I'm told it's one of the worst films ever made.
Excuse me. When the United States government recognizes the futility of what's going on in Afghanistan, when do you think the United States government will recognize the futility of its ventures in Afghanistan and Iraq? And when they pull away from those countries, what do you think the consequences will be for the United States at that time?
Tons of bad history, one textbook after another. We brought freedom and democracy to countries that had never enjoyed it before. But we are the great heart of all nations. We only work for others to make them happy. There's never been a bunch of more bogus bores than the American government, ever. And if that sounds familiar, Mark Twain said it too. No, my worry about Obama has been that he's bought this war thing. He doesn't know what to say to a general. Like, no. Our generals don't want to fight because they might get hurt. All they want is a better room at Walter Reed Hospital when they come down with, you know, minor complaints. And they expect to get it because they got the extra star. I'm wartime president, I'm wartime president. I can hear the little fool saying that to some general. The general knows he can only get that extra star from a deranged president who'll give it to him. And that's how he bought the generals. Got them to go along with the idiotic war, which nobody wanted. But it helped having no media because nobody knew anything about it. It's quietly done.
Most of your commentary, most of your work is about, or recent work is commentary on U.S. politics and U.S. society, but you haven't lived in the U.S. for a number of years. How has that changed your perspective? Does it give you a better view or a worse one or more clear?
Well, it seems to me that you read the tabloid press rather more eagerly than I do. It's my subject, the United States. I think that should be clear by now. They know it. They don't like what I say because they work for big, rich people who own newspapers like Henry Luce used to own, and others. They have all kinds of mythologies that they want to spread around. I don't. I don't think they are ever prepared for the size of my audience. And I'm prepared for the shrinking of theirs. New York Times is in great trouble. Yes, there is a God.
Could you please tell us what you think about the decline of newspapers? Because there is a feeling that newspapers are going to die. How do you think that's going to affect us?
Well, it already has. You're asking the question. You've noticed it. Most people don't notice it. Newspaper proprietors are sad. They love having their lies going into every house every morning. And to lose that, I think they're losing their strength, and they know it too. Nothing to be done. If we had good newspapers, there's the only one that I read coming out of our country, and that is, what's the one I always read?
Financial Times.
Financial Times. It's well written. Everything else, I mean, the New York Times is the worst writing in the country. They all go on to write novels which immediately climb the bestseller list. The Times looks after its own. It's a bunch of crooks all together doing their best to rip off the publisher. The New York Times. Long may it rat fish.
Mr. Gore Vidal, Ms. Layla.